welcome to Bring It Home's monthly series on redefining success. This year, Bring It Home is celebrating the questions that we began asking together in October at the Bring It Parents Summit. So we began our journey asking the question, what are the qualities that most support us and our children as they evolve into the next generation of leaders? So today I'm here with the incredibly lovely, wonderful, powerful, and beautiful Lola Reich, who's the spiritual director of Bodhi Spiritual Center here in Chicago. I'm like looking over here at you in my screen, noticing I'm forgetting to look in the camera. So Lola is one of my favorite people in the world, one of my closest friends. I consider her a consciousness warrior, always holding herself and me in place. Lola's part of this new thought movement. So she's a new thought leader in my eyes. And one of her greatest gifts in the world is this incredibly powerful, strong, loving, nurturing mother to four. So I'm really excited to bring Lola into this conversation. Lola and I co-hosted the Bring It Parents Summit last October, which was a ton of fun to plan and a great event where we introduced the very things we're talking about this year and today. So I've invited Lola here to talk this month about trust. So we're about to start the school year off starting in September. And I'm particularly excited to talk to Lola about like trust, the meta trust, this concept of trust in the universe, in the world, and in our lives. And as her, role as human being, as her role as a spiritual leader, and as her role as a parent, and how her relationship to trust has, kind of put her on her path to who she's become today. And I'm also excited to specifically talk to Lola about her recent experience with her 18-year-old daughter and their college application process and where her daughter ended up and how trust led them through that whole process. So thanks for being here.
I'm so grateful to be here.
Awesome. So Lola has taught me again and again and again in the short time that we've known each other, really, we haven't known each other very long, the power of trust and trusting that everything is divine and everything is here for my highest and best. And you're always a constant reminder to me of that. So thank you for that. And so we began exploring all kinds of qualities this year to support our children in cultivating authentic success in their lives. So what does it mean to be authentically successful? That's the question we're always asking. So today, Lola, I would love it if you would introduce yourself, explain to everyone who you are in the world, how you got to be where you are today, how you've used trust in your life to get there, and then tell us about your journey to parenting, who you are as a parent.
Great. So my name is Lola Wright. I am the spiritual director of this incredible place in Chicago called the Bodhi Spiritual Center. I spent 15 years in banking and real estate. I was with Credit Suisse, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, a few little boutique firms, and a number of things in between. And I landed there because I became a mom young. I was a freshman in college, and that was not the game plan for this Glencoe girl.
Okay, for those who are watching who aren't from Chicago.
Yes. So I grew up on the North Shore of Chicago, which is a very densely affluent suburban enclave just north of the city on the lake. And my parents were big socialites up there. And there's sort of a trajectory that one would follow. And it would include going to a prestigious university in many cases, and then perhaps pursuing an MBA, and then finding yourself at a consulting firm or an investment bank. And finding yourself pregnant at 18 was not usually one of the recommended paths. So there I was. And I would say there were certainly experiences prior to 18 that required my leaning in to trust, but that was one of the biggest. You know, it was really, my dad said, you have a couple choices, and one of them involves having the baby, moving forward with this, and severing all financial support and being on your own and playing this big girl role that you say you're ready to play.
Wow, I get chills just when you say it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, it was a very extreme position, and he has continued to maintain that position. Um, and my dad and I are connected. And in fact, I just heard a voicemail he left me this morning as my daughter's preparing to leave for college, and him just welling up with tears on the phone around her. So much has occurred over the last 18 years, but what it did require was a trust in something greater than myself, because of my own mind, I could not figure out how I was going to make this thing work.
Yeah.
But something in me, like my gut, my intuition, it just knew that this was for me. And
at 18, you knew that?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm aware of now is that there was an unconscious commitment on my part to create an experience of family that I felt was disrupted and lost in really significant ways when my parents got divorced in a very public setting at the age of 13. And so there was sort of this unconscious restoration of family that I was wanting to cultivate.
Get it. I get it. Yep.
But that I didn't distinguish until many years later. In the moment of all of that unraveling, I just was like, I know an abortion is not for me, and that wasn't a moral choice. It was just that wasn't what my gut was telling me was for me. I knew adoption was not for me. Again, not a moral choice, just what my gut was telling me. And I was to have this baby. And
so I want to interrupt you for one quick second.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to me that at 18 you could identify with trusting your gut, and how fear, because I can imagine how scary it must have been, that fear didn't get in the way, that you trusted your gut. Because there's so many times in my life where I can say, where I listened to I heard my gut, but I went the other way. Went another direction. So that's really interesting to me. What do you think contributed to that level of trust in yourself?
I think some of it is in part just my nature. I mean, I have this very sort of, I've cultivated, nature, nurture, who knows, like this very bold presence. And I was met by a great challenge that said, you're crazy, you can't do this, you've royally screwed up. And so in that moment, what I got was like, well, I can't trust this out here because these voices are telling me what I'm not and what's not possible. And so the alternative is to look within and say, okay, I know I have this. And I fundamentally believe, and I'll give my parents credit for this, like I fundamentally believe that there is a spirit that resides in each of us that is so much greater than our conditions and our circumstances.
Yes.
And and people will say, how do you know that? And it's like, I don't know. I just know that I know. It's just, I just know that which is right before me is just one segment of all that is.
And did you know that at 18?
I think I did intuitively. I mean, I just knew, like, something in me is saying this is for me to do.
That's so cool. And so that's the very thing that I so want to celebrate about this whole story right now. And I'm like pausing your story, and there's more to tell. But I think there's like this basic fundamental truth in our children and us as human beings, that there is this knowing. There's like this pull that we have from the very moment we exist, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know when I'm hungry, I know when I'm tired, like the very basic needs to these grander things that occur as we age. And I really fundamentally believe that it's our job as parents to not get in the way of that which is already known within us. And so I'm really honoring, like, wow. I mean, you and I have talked about this many times, but I don't think I've ever really spoken to you so specifically about how you came to this decision. Like, I know the story.
Yeah.
So, beautiful, beautiful.
I also think that, like, as parents, not only are we here to sort of allow and trust in our kids' own inherent wisdom, but that we are also here to be the voice of reminding them that it is there.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
and that we get to do that, not just us to them, but like that when we create that as a dialogue in our family, like, and the thing that's become so clear for me in the last couple months, is like the way that we have set up the paradigm of the parent-child relationship in our present culture is that, parents are the ultimate authority. They know the greatest degree of wisdom, and we're here to bestow and impart this great wisdom onto these helpless small people. And what I've gotten really, really clear about, and I was in large part raised in an environment where it was like children are to be seen and not heard. And so that sort of fuels that paradigm.
Yeah, for sure.
But, so fast forward and we can go back and forth, but here I am, this baby that I was pregnant with in 1997 is now 18 years old, and we're in the final weeks of preparing to send her off to college in New York City. And in the whole college process, I really got, especially in the final stages where she had to make some really, big decisions, big choices, I really got so clearly, like, this is not my choice to make. Mm-hmm. There is something in her soul that knows what is right for her. Mm-hmm. And I need to keep myself in check so that I don't start filtering her process with my wants and needs.
Yeah. And you did that so beautifully because, I was with you guys every step of the way. So let's jump a little bit into that. Tell us a little bit about Lauren's story and her, how she got to where she's going.
So I have 4 kids that are 18, 16, 7, and 4. They are the product of 2 different relationships that have had many facets of the relationships, and 2 men that are very different and very incredible. And Lauren Olivia Royal is my oldest. She's 18. She is a very driven student. She's a very driven human being. She is an activist. She is a fierce activist. She is an incredible performer and artist. And so she applied to 7 colleges. And she had one school that was her top choice in this very niche program at New York University within the Tisch School of Arts, and it's called the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music. And it is said that at NYU, it is their most competitive program throughout the entire university. Yeah. And somehow she found it in 8th grade. She has been determined to be a vocalist, a pop vocalist. And, it's so funny because there's that cynical part of one that can be like, oh, honey, everyone wants to be a pop vocalist. Everyone wants to be a rock star. And
it's like time. Don't waste your time.
Right. And it's like, that is the voice of the collective cynicism.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't need to be that for her. There's plenty of that out there. Mm-hmm. So in her process, She got into 6 of the 7 universities that she applied to. She got about $45,000 to the University of Southern California, which is a great school with a great music program. She got a full academic scholarship to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and she was waitlisted to her top choice, New York University, Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music. And I sort of like, I'm like moving through the world. I'm just really paying attention. I feel like the universe, life is always giving us indicators.
Mm-hmm.
And our degree of awareness, our degree of awakeness, our degree of alertness will yield us different results. And really not intending to make one better or worse or whatever, but just paying attention. So she got into USC. She did not get into the music program she wanted at USC, but she got into the school and she got a big chunk of money. She still would have to come up with a significant amount of money. And my suggestion to her was, given that you didn't get into the exact program that you wanted to go to there, perhaps it's not the right place to, figure things out with. Howard University is a historically Black college. My kids are biracial. Didn't have the music program that she wanted, but it was like, wow, how cool to go to this country's first historically Black college. I mean, the history of the school is amazing, and a full academic scholarship was incredibly attractive.
Hard to beat.
Yep. And NYU said, look, don't hold your breath. You might not get in at all, which is very common when one's been waitlisted. And if you do, we might not tell you until like late August, right before school starts. And so they ask you, like, do you want to stay on the wait list? And you have to do sort of an amendment to your application. And, the conversation that she and I had was, I think it's easy, especially in the college process. It can be easy to slip into like, oh, well, they didn't want me, and start to sort of like lay down. And it was like, no. This is your dream. And by the way, it's not my dream. I don't have a lot of attachment here. This is your dream. And so my responsibility as a parent is to speak life into her vision, to speak life into her dream. Again, not from a place of attachment, but from a place of possibility.
Right. And that's a gift. Because there's 2 things that I see going on here, Lola. Number one, you haven't allowed the collective to get in the way, because there's a lot of places in that story so far where I could see you going, all right, honey, it's a full scholarship, sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
How can you possibly give that up? So where you can sort of undermine her spirit. So there's a way in which that can occur. There's a way in which you could sort of buy into that fear.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe it's not such a good idea. Or maybe even the part where you said, she, since she was really young, wanted to be a vocalist. At what point do we as parents go, well, this is realistic or not realistic, or just let it go altogether and trust that even if we don't see that it's possible, even if we can't see it, we trust that whatever she chooses to do is in right and divine for her perfect journey.
Yeah. Well, when I was 21, I was pregnant with my second child.
Yeah.
And I was working at what was then had just transitioned from First Chicago NBD to Bank One, which is now JP Morgan Chase.
Yeah.
And my mom came downtown and she took me out to lunch. I was pregnant with my second child, 21. I was going to school at Loyola University at night. I was in a really volatile alcoholic relationship. And my mom sat across the table from me and she said, you could be the CEO of JP Morgan Chase if you wanted to be. And I was like, you're crazy. And she's like, no, you could be the CEO of JP Morgan Chase if you wanted to be. And she was so convicted.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that trust in myself at that time. I didn't have that belief in myself at that time. Thank goodness she did.
Amazing.
Because I could believe in her belief in me.
Yeah.
And so that is the great gift of human relationship. And that is the great gift of the parent-child relationship. There are times where she was full throttle, like, this is what she's up to, this is what she's doing. And I was sort of hanging on her coattails.
Mm-hmm.
And then she got tired and she felt discouraged. And this other offer looked really good, but I knew based on everything that she had said and done previously what her heart's desire was. So in that moment, it was my opportunity to say, honey, let us trust that if you are meant to go to Howard, you will end up at Howard. If an opportunity is to exist at NYU, a way will be made. But let us not throw in the towel so easily, so swiftly. Stay the path, keep moving forward.
Yeah.
It will reveal itself. And so I believed in her in a moment that she needed that, in the same way that my mom did for me. What a gift.
That's an amazing gift. So I can see how the thread of your mom, even back then, is sort of still living in you, and how powerful that is. Like,
yeah.
That's the legacy. This is why this work is so important, because we are handing down our belief systems to our children in the next generation, and it lives in them forever. Because when you stop and you say that, and you've said that to me before, you've told me that before, you are firm. You are like, you look and you are centered. You don't move like that. You live that belief that your mother gifted you. And I think that's an incredible, incredible gift. And the power we have as parents, because we can equally say to our kids, you have no business.
Well, yeah, this is where I feel like this is just the straight science of this.
Yes.
Like, this is like, forget all the like feel good, airy fairy, consciousness, la la la. This is just straight neuroscience.
Yes.
And it's like, it is how you can look at cultures of human beings, or stratas of human beings, or classes of human beings, and understand why patterns keep being recreated.
Yes.
And so, it's like, we really are here to interrupt the limiting thought patterns. We are here to interrupt those thought patterns that hold us captive, and say something more is possible. I don't necessarily know what it is, but I'm trusting in that.
Yes. And so I want to speak to that a little bit, because you're talking about this process and we haven't gotten to the end yet of what's happened. But all along, I remember this. I remember that you did experience, I think fear is too big of a word, but like, it wasn't as if you were hairy-fairy going, oh, everything's just going to work out and it's fine. Like,
No.
You guys struggled. This was not an easy process for you. And so I want you to just name that a little bit, because I think when people listen to us and we talk about what it means to be conscious or trusting the universe, whatever, they develop a belief that there's some sort of ease that goes along with that.
No, I mean, I remember the day that she got the waitlist notice from NYU, and just the deflation that she felt. And it was like, no, let's go. Keep your eye on the prize, stay focused. And there was, it's like an 18-year-old and her mother, like we're in the throes of her sort of like breaking through the egg, like cracking out of the shell. And it was like, I have to trust myself in knowing when is right for me to push as a parent,
yes,
and when is right for me to go, this is not mine, And it wasn't easy. I mean, I distinctly remember literally like sitting next to her, working on her waitlist application, and her getting pissed and frustrated, and she'd write something and I'd say, no, dig deeper, that's not interesting. And she was like, I had to trust my gut. I don't know, and this is not, that's just my story. Every parent has to figure out what that right balance is for them. But there was a lot of angst. And, just to fast forward the story, what ended up happening was she accepted at Howard University. We went there, got all excited, wore our T-shirts, the whole 9 yards. And then she ended up hearing just a few weeks ago, really, from New York University that she'd been accepted, and that they were offering her significantly less money for a much more expensive school. And it was a really significant choice point. And I would say really her first adult decision, her first adult choice that she had to make. And I was grateful to, be alongside. And she is a very, much like me, she's a very strong-willed personality. So it was a real dance because I knew that if I pushed too hard, I'd be X'd out. And if I laid back too far, she'd be like, what the heck, So it was, again, just trusting that my internal knower has the right way to be in this, and that there's an internal knower in her. And if we can meet from that place versus from our righteous indignation or our ego structure, it's like something else is possible here.
Well, and also this, I really want to sort of sit with that piece you talked about a minute ago, is like trusting the balance between pushing and letting go. And, I know you very well. You're an Enneagram 8. You have a very powerful personality, and you are very bold. And for me as a parent, I wouldn't necessarily show up that way. I would show up a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And what I think we need to recognize is trusting that we have been divinely appointed to this particular child, and they've been divinely appointed to us. And however it is you show up in the world, as bold as it is, that's just perfect for Lauren and who she is. And however I show up is just perfect for my children. And to stop questioning, I wrote a blog post years and years and years ago about you are your own expert. And there's like nothing outside. There's no book I can read. There's no friend I can consult with that can tell me the right way to handle a situation with my children or my family or my spouse, or that the knowing is in here. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're pointing at. And I love that, because I think that's the thing we struggle with the most as parents, because we're so afraid that we're going to do something wrong.
Yeah. So I think the big question there is, well, how do I hear that voice? How do I hear that intuition? How do I get in touch with that knower?
Yeah.
And so I want to speak to that for a moment, because it's a muscle. It's like, I can't run a marathon tomorrow without having trained for it.
Right.
And the same is true. Like, the more practiced you are in going within and listening to that still small voice, listening to that intuition, the easier it is to access it. So I just want to encourage every human being on the planet, and certainly parents, to find a practice that works for you, that creates stillness and quiet. And even if it is just a beginning practice of 5 minutes. I mean, this is why there are apps like Headspace out there, or Insight Timer. Yep. This is why the practice of meditation has become so prolific, really.
Yeah.
Because there is something there, and the more we cultivate that sense of self, independent from all the external stimulus and circumstances, we have greater access to it in those moments when we need it.
Yes, it's all about that practice. And I think we can't underestimate the power of practicing in small ways. The little tiny things matter. And I'm often coaching parents, and they're like, well, this is just a stupid small example. I'm like, actually, no, it's a small step on the big journey. And the gingerbread crumbs. We need to pay attention to the gingerbread crumbs. And you don't get there overnight. I think you're right. And hopefully by the time our kids are 18, we're prepared and we're giving them good feedback. And so what I see,
and if we're not, it's never too late. That's the good news.
Well, that's the beautiful news. And like whatever we do is perfect. We just have to keep trusting that.
When I was probably 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, my mom would say, well, you picked me. And I'd be like, ah, stop it with that. That is so annoying. And by the way, you're completely absolving yourself of responsibility. And I have a greater appreciation for that worldview or that perspective now. I don't think that the union or the partnership or the matching or the pairing of parent-child is random.
No.
There is some kind of, call it whatever you want, a karmic agreement, a soul agreement, like whatever you want to call it. There is a divine appointment that each being has been given in partnership with the people that brought them into this world. And it's can be a sort of a controversial statement to make, but I oftentimes say in the classes that I teach and the talks that I give, if all your parents did was bring you into this world, they did their part.
Yeah.
Your journey began the moment you took your first breath. And all of your learnings have been collected from that moment. And that does not invalidate the challenges, the traumas, the pain, the upsets, the hurt, the brokenheartedness. And here we are. So now what?
This was fun. I enjoyed it. So what's happening in just a few weeks?
August. So Lauren Olivia Royal, my brilliant and beautiful daughter, who you can find on Facebook at Olivia Royal. She has her musicians page.
Yeah, you should check her out. I mean, she's got an incredible gift.
Yeah, she and you know what? She's just starting to peel back her own self-expression. And so I could not be more excited for her. So she's taking the big leap. She's taking the big risk, and she is going to NYU. And, you know, she works as a phone host at Lou Malnati's Pizza. And I was driving her to work a couple of weeks ago as she was sort of in the throes of this choice point. And I asked her, I said, so honey, what are you thinking? And she said, Mom, I have to go. I have no idea how we're going to make this work. I have no idea how we're going to fund this, but I just know that I have to go. I know I'm supposed to be there. And if I find after a year it's not the right place, I can always make a new choice. And I thought, oh my goodness, my daughter has gotten something.
I could cry right now thinking about it.
Yeah. It was so empowering to see her trust herself.
Yes. I mean, that's it. You know? That's the gift you're giving her, because you're not going to be there forever.
That's right.
She has to learn to trust herself, and she's doing it, and she's doing it with such grace and such beauty and such excitement. And I mean, I've always known, the moment I heard her say she wants to go to NYU, you know, I was like, oh, that's where she's going.
Yeah.
Even when she got accepted to Howard, I'm like, nope. When I try it on, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So this story is beautiful, and I love it. And you know, I also want to point out to our listeners that the money was a big deal, because it's not as if you guys didn't have savings or any money set aside for school. So it's one thing to say, am I going to go to Howard? Am I going to go to NYU when I have a couple $100,000 in the bank backing me up?
That's right.
But it's another thing to say, I have a full scholarship to an incredible institution.
Yeah.
I can get a free ride for 4 years and have zero debt.
Yeah.
And I'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'll get a job. Like, you know, I know so many people who make decisions from that place.
Yeah.
Or they're justifying their decision because they're afraid of the financial, you know, obligations on the other end. And I'm not saying that's not something to consider.
Yep.
But the making that choice from that place, and just trusting that it's going to be okay, no matter what, it's going to be okay, we'll figure it out, is really one of the more beautiful gifts, I think, in this whole thing. And I can't wait to see what happens with her.
Yeah. You know, I think it was Goethe that said, take the next step and the net will appear.
Yes.
And that really was like a mantra for me in this whole process was like, you know, and I don't say that from a place of like being willy-nilly. I think there's great value in being thoughtful and being disciplined, in looking at all of the options, not being overindulgent, you know, all of those things. I'm a huge advocate for that. And her soul knew.
Yep.
Like her heart knew. And I trusted her, and I trust this benevolent universe that we live in, that she will not be led astray.
Yep.
And in any moment, she can make a new choice.
Yes. And it's not catastrophic. You know, I celebrate this because I too, in the 8th grade, I applied to college, the college that I ended up going to, which was a really small design school here in Chicago. But I knew, like in my soul, I'm like, that's where I'm supposed to be. And my parents thought I was crazy. And, you know, everyone's like, well, you should go to a real college first. And fortunately, my parents didn't resist too much. They just were like, well, okay, if that's what you want to do, fine. They weren't fully on board with it, but they weren't pushing too much. And I was so strong-willed.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what anyone else was saying. I was going to do what I was going to do. And the point being is, like, there was a stirring inside me. What I chose in the circle that I grew up in didn't make any sense. It was completely non-traditional. And everyone thought it was a silly waste of money, frankly. Mm-hmm. So I love that you spoke, that Lauren said in 8th grade, she knew this was for her. And so I think we have to listen to that and really hear it. And now, you know, Robert's going through the college application, experiencing a tremendous amount of stress around it. No matter what I say or how I show up in relationship to it, he's getting stress from the outside world and his peers. So I'll really be curious to see how we navigate this together over the next year. And then my middle daughter is contemplating switching high schools. We just went to look at a new school yesterday, and she's going through a lot of these same fears. Well, like the what ifs. What if I switch? What am I going to lose? And what I said to her yesterday is exactly what Lauren said is, so if I don't like it in a year, I can change.
Yep.
And, you know, and if we all lived our life that way, what might occur? I cannot.
Yeah. Here's the truth. The voice of reason, the voice of being reasonable is always available. Yes. Like, you can always go back and choose that voice.
Yes.
You know, but it's like, what, there's something in you. There's some enthusiasm, there's some excitement, there's some curiosity, there's some interest, there's some soul's longing. The voice of reason will always be available.
Yes.
Like, that is always an option we can go back to.
Yes.
You know, it's like one of the collective family voices that came up in Lauren's process of choice was, honey, sometimes you just have to be responsible and you have to be realistic. Mm-hmm. And, you know, taking the full ride and deferring your heart's desire, that's the realistic choice. And I was like,
that's the smart choice. That's the smart choice.
Yeah, but you know what? If we start raising our kids to be realistic, nothing will ever shift.
Right.
The last thing that we want to do is raise realistic kids. No one realistic has ever made a great impact on this planet.
Yep.
So I say, be crazy, be unrealistic, go for your heart's desire. You may fall down, you may skin your knees, and that's okay. You'll get back up.
Yes, that's the resilience. That's why resilience is so important. That's why all of these, you know, foundational skills matter, and who our beings are becoming.
Yes.
Okay, this felt good. We can go on forever and ever, and we're way over the time you've committed to give me. So I just want to say I'm so grateful, and I really want to honor you as a parent. And, you know, every month we've been talking about all these qualities that we want to cultivate in our kids, and it always comes down to, it's up to us and how we're showing up, how we are showing up in relationship to our children. And when we can rest so can they.
Yeah.
If we just rest in trust, if we believe, they're gonna believe.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many ways in which your mother keeps showing up in your story. Like, my mother said this, my mother said this. And here you are 36 years later, still with what she's saying, sort of, running like the ticker tape of your brain.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's all up to us. And I really appreciate you chatting with me about it and for continuing this conversation and starting it off, because in particular, it's on my mind a lot because school's coming, and, we're looking at colleges right now. And I know so many people in this place, this year can be such a stressful time. And you guys went through it so beautifully and so eloquently. And
I think it's important for us to remember that these are privileges.
Yes.
When we remember that like fretting over what 7 colleges she might go to, that's a privilege. Like, if those are our biggest worries, wow, what a gift. And so to keep things in perspective and say, you know what, statistically, you'll have 6 careers in your life these days.
Mm-hmm.
This is just one choice.
Mm-hmm.
How can we have fun with it? How can we be playful with it? How can we be curious about it? How can we live in the wonder? And how can we get out of our, fear-based thinking, our scarcity thinking, our limited thinking, and really like rise up out of the survival brain into the higher states of consciousness, the higher brain, and look for new possibilities.
Yes, and why can't this decision doesn't have to be so big.
Yeah.
We make it like the biggest decision of their lives. And by the way, we start preparing for it when they're 3.
It's insanity.
It's craziness. So the amount of stress that goes into this time, to their 12 years of school life, it's insane to me. And so this is how they're entering that part of their lives. It's crazy. It should be fun. And if they're not making this decision from a playful, fun, joyful place, how are they going to learn to ever do that? Ever?
Yeah, look, I lead a place, Bodhi Spiritual Center here in Chicago. I teach classes many nights a week to adults, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 20s, the whole gamut.
Yep.
And everyone is unraveling these stories.
Yes.
So we actually have the opportunity to interrupt the story making.
Yes.
Otherwise, the unraveling will occur. I can't tell you the number of people who I spend time with in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are saying, I can't believe I've spent the last 20 years doing something that doesn't bring joy into my life.
Exactly.
And, younger generations are much less tolerant of it. Like, you look at the millennial generation, there's a much lower threshold for spending time and energy on things I don't want and need.
Well,
so
and
that's good news.
I love how we judge them as being spoiled or entitled when we hear that.
Yeah.
And there's a thread of that can exist. So I don't want to ignore that. But there is a way in which they're speaking truth.
Yeah, they're liberated. They're like, forget you and all this nonsense of acquisition and power and consumption, and and it shows up in different ways, but it just there are new ways of being emerging, and that is good news. And everybody can take a big deep breath. And you know what? I am certain that the college process will be vastly different with my 16-year-old son.
Yeah.
Because he is a vastly different human being.
Yes.
So we adapt to each being, and we trust that each one is on their right and perfect path. And we're here to just help foster that, or to midwife that, or whatever word you want to use.
Yes, it's absolutely true. And, parenting to the child, individual child. I mean, that's why parenting from presence is so important, because we absolutely need to be aware. It's like in my garden, I have tomatoes and I have blueberries. they're different. I have to take care of them differently.
Yep.
Or I have shade plants and I have sun plants. How I nurture them is how they'll grow. And
Yep.
it's the same for our children. I have 3 children with 3 vastly different personalities, and my kids are regularly saying to me, "It's not fair. You're treating him differently." And I'm like, "You're absolutely right. I'm treating them differently because they are different."
Yep.
And I have to be okay with that. And
Yep.
so you're going to have a different experience with Trey, and that's beautiful. That's the gift.
Yep.
So it's always up to us as the adults. Let's, continue this path of staying present and aware and conscious, and love all the learning that our kids are always providing for us. Like I love how Lauren in this process has taught you to go back to trusting yourself over
Totally.
and over.
And to not getting seduced by the voice of reason.
Well, and the voice of fear and the whole culture.
Yeah.
So I'm celebrating that. I'm celebrating Lauren. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I love you. I'm grateful for the work that you do. I think you're brilliant.
Mm.
And it's a great gift that you bring these conversations into the community of parents on the planet.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me. You and I can talk about this for 6 more months because we share so many ways of thinking about it. Okay, tell me, so for those of you listening in, thanks. This was a longer but really valuable interview, so I'm really excited for you to listen in and participate. And you're going to find more tools on how to cultivate trust, like really dig in and cultivate it and believe in it in yourself so that you can mirror that for your children so they can sink into that for themselves. So you'll be getting lots of tools this month, so check that out. And I'd love to hear how you did and your thoughts on it over on Facebook. So join me this month, Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is you like to be on social media. And Lola, people can find you at bodhispiritualcenter.com. Where else?
bodhispiritualcenter.org. BODHI spiritualcenter.org. On Twitter at Bodhi Chicago, on Instagram at Bodhi Chicago. And you can always listen to our messages by visiting bodhispiritualcenter.org/stream.
Yeah, that's a great gift, everyone. If you don't live in Chicago, I get to be there live as much as I can, hopefully every Sunday. But when I'm not, I'm always downloading and listening to the talks. And sometimes I listen to them even when I've been there because they're so rich and they're so beautiful. And last week, Sunday was off the charts. I wished the whole entire service was being recorded because it's so amazing and so beautiful. So if you're in Chicago, get over to Bodhi Spiritual Center. Don't miss it. Sign up for a class. Get in with Lola. I'm doing foundations this fall myself, so I'm so excited. I'm finally able to do it. And get involved in that community. It's a really beautiful, special place to be. So get over there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I look forward to more. If you've missed last month's interview with Meena Shrivasana on kindness, hop over. That was a really rich and fun conversation. And we've dug into a lot of ideals about how are we being kind to ourselves, how are we being kind to our families, and how are we being kind out in the world, and particularly in this political environment that we now live in. How is it we're being kind to Donald Trump? How is it we're being kind to Hillary Clinton? How is it we're being kind to supporters and one another? And it's been a really fun and rich conversation. And also, interesting enough, what are our children taking away for how we're showing up in relationship to the political landscape right now?
Yep.
So practicing kindness was really fun last month. And jump into trust, enjoy this next school year, and wherever you are in the process, trust that everything is perfect and divine and just for you. And wait, I have to do that over. So trust that everything is perfect and divine and just for you. So I look forward to seeing you here every month. Thank you, Lola.
I love you. Love you.
Love you too. Enjoy the moments.